Live from downtown Vancouver at the Vancouver Film School campus, it's time for EP Live. Hey, welcome to EPN. My name is Victor Lucas, and we bring you the latest and everything cool. And it hasn't been that often recently that we've been bringing you the latest and everything cool. I've been on a bit of a vacation, so thank you very much for bearing with our little break. Very necessary break. I went out to see my niece, Erin, and her husband, Chris, her now husband, Chris, get married. And I was in Scotland, in a place called Applecross, Scotland, way on the west coast of Scotland. And then I went through the Isle of Skye, and we went all through the Highlands, brought our daughter, my wife and I brought our daughter, and we had an incredible adventure. It was awesome, and it was a much-needed break. And lots of fun, but I still was playing games and following all of the crazy things that were going on, and we're going to get into some of that today. We're going to have an amazing show for you, but let's get started with our rundown. Today it is dedicated to Ramrod. Victor Lucas, still at it. Love your game reviews. Wish EP was still on television. A lot of people say that. TV is very different. TV has changed. It's very different these days. I also want to give out a shout out to Mike Rod, and I don't know if Ramrod and Mike Rod are the same person, could be, but Mike Rod sent me a tweet with a picture of us. We met at E3, and it was a very sweet tweet. So Mike Rod, Ramrod, if you're related, this rundown is all yours. Watch out, because Nintendo just made some smashing announcements in their latest Nintendo Direct presentation. The biggest news is that Overwatch is coming to the Switch. Similar to the Switch port of Diablo 3, Blizzard promises that all the content, characters, and weapons from the existing versions will be available in the Switch version, although the graphics will obviously take a bit of a hit. That lands October 15th. In the meantime, Banjo-Kazooie are making a surprise debut in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate today. On top of that, a new character, Terry Bogard, from the SNK fighting series, Fatal Fury, is joining the game this November. This makes him the fourth of 5 planned DLC characters for the game, but looking ahead, Nintendo says even more new characters are on the way, although they haven't given us any hints about who those might be. The Nintendo Switch Online service is getting something it frankly should have had all along: Super Nintendo games. Like the existing NES games, you'll be able to play a library of classic SNES games when you're online, including the usual suspects like Super Mario World, F-Zero, and A Link to the Past. They begin rolling out tomorrow, and Nintendo is also releasing a classic SNES USB controller very soon. Now here's a surprise that's a little chilling. Nintendo announced the all-new game Deadly Premonition 2, a sequel to the 2010 cult classic that arrives next year, and in the meantime, the first game is available to play on the Switch right now. Finally, a new definitive edition of the 2010 Wii game, Xenoblade Chronicles, is coming to the Switch next year. It was a very strong Nintendo Direct, and lots of great little teases and tastes of games that are coming up. I think the most exciting thing for me, for sure, is the Super Nintendo library. I'm a massive Super Nintendo fan, and frankly, as it stands right now, because you get the NES library and the SNES library, and they're going to keep doling stuff out, and yes, you got to pay for Nintendo Online, this kind of tips the Switch into the favorite console of all time category for me. There's been incredible games that Nintendo has been publishing. Yes, we need more third-party support, and yes, the horsepower could be beefed up, but this library on this machine has been blowing my mind, and the fact that they are allowing you to dip into the past for, a reasonable price. I'd still like to be able to re-download all the games that I purchased on the eShop over the years. It's still phenomenal, though. The fact that you can port around all of these classic games. Super excited to buy another SNES controller. This will be about my millionth SNES controller, but I'm happy to buy another one, and I'm super happy to play these games again and share them with my family. I think it's absolutely the right move. But classic games that are going to be an interesting fit on this machine, like The Witcher 3, Divinity Original Sin 2. Very much looking forward to those. I know they're going to kind of challenge the horsepower of the console, but it's just amazing that you can carry these massive titles around with you and then plug them into a television set and enjoy them with your family. Very, very good moves, Nintendo. Keep it up. Very, very exciting. All right, the biggest news that happened while we were away is the SpiderMan divorce between Sony and Disney. After cooperating to share Spider-Man for the last few years, Sony and Marvel's parent company Disney have had a very public falling out. Both sides have offered their own version of the story, but it seems that after the success of Spider-Man Far From Home, Marvel and Disney wanted a bigger slice of the profits from future Spider-Man movies, which Sony refused, deciding that they no longer need their help on the franchise. Whoever you decide to blame, this is obviously a huge blow for fans. It means we won't be seeing Spider-Man in future Marvel movies, and we also won't be seeing Marvel characters like Nick Fury in future Spider-Man movies. Now, how the hell is this supposed to work? This Spider-Man exists in the MCU. He was introduced this way. He was introduced with all of these supporting characters. Iron Man was the co-star of the Spider-Man Homecoming film, and Nick Fury's all over Far From Home. And the end reveal at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, which I won't spoil because I know a few of you haven't seen it yet, but it really suggests that the MCU needs to be involved in this big calamity that's kind of teased at the end of the thing. It doesn't make any sense, and I suspect that this is, it's an ongoing game of chicken, and I think that the parties are going to figure it out. I also think that this is kind of a way to drum up publicity and to get people excited and to create fervor so that when they do finally announce Spider-Man 3 in this universe, they can say, we've got it all back together again, or they can do something stealthy and sneaky and kind of suggest that it's going to be a non-MCU Spider-Man movie, and then, we slipped some MCU characters in there, which would be kind of rad. Or maybe they'll have some Fantastic Four tease or something like that, which is now owned by Marvel and Disney. So I think we might be getting played here a little bit, which is fine. These are obviously massive studios with a massive property. The truth is that Sony doesn't need the MCU to make Spider-Man movies successful. We saw that with Into the Spider-Verse. We saw that with the previous runs with the Spider-Man movies. Even if you didn't like them, they made a lot of money, and Sony has made tons and tons of dough off of Spider-Man. That's why they're not going to relinquish it. I did hear that they were willing to sell Spider-Man back to Marvel for $10 billion, and that's just a rumor that I heard. I think he's worth it, quite frankly. I think that with Iron Man kind of off the table, Marvel needs they need their Batman. They need it's so nuts, isn't it? It's just so crazy. It's like if DC was making DC movies with all the superheroes except for Batman, because Batman was sold to Universal. It just is so bizarre that this all happened. And I think it's inevitable that Spider-Man is going to go back to Disney and Marvel. We may even see Disney and Marvel assume all of Columbia Pictures and Sony Pictures library and buy that whole thing outright in order to get this. Right now it's an interesting game of Monopoly that we are watching. But I fully suspect that we're going to see Spider-Man back in the MCU. I just don't see how they could have Tom Holland out there without that. It'll be cool to see Tom Holland with Tom Hardy in some Venom Spider-Man kind of thing. I just want great movies, first and foremost. And I do think that Spider-Man movies can exist outside of the realm of the MCU, but everything that they've done with Tom Holland and set up with this Spider-Man incorporates all of that. So it's just utter nonsense that they can't make this thing work. I suspect that they will, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it all gets resolved. Now, last week at their D23 Expo, Disney also announced loads of new shows for their upcoming streaming service, Disney+. The biggest has to be the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which will take place between the events of the prequels and the original trilogy, and see Ewan McGregor return to the iconic role for the first time in more than 15 years. There has been rumors that Obi-Wan was going to be getting a movie series, but apparently Disney and Lucasfilm feel that the story will work better as a TV series. We'd expect to see Obi-Wan on new adventures while in exile on Tatooine, all while watching over the young Luke Skywalker, and it begins shooting next year. Very excited about this. I think that even if you're not a fan of the prequel trilogy, which I'm not. There are elements that are cool, but I think the coolest thing in that prequel trilogy, and I think this is kind of a universally accepted deal, is that Ewan McGregor made an excellent Obi-Wan Kenobi. He transformed into this character. You fully believed that he was a young Alec Guinness, and he was just cool. He just, he fit the role really well. He went from, the younger apprentice in the first in Phantom Menace to being that sort of cautious, careful, and you can understand why he's got that sort of cautious, careful kind of attitude with Anakin, right? Because he'd already seen some of the horrors of this war that was going on in the stars. And so he was it was a fascinating, accomplished portrayal, and he's been wanting to do it. We've all been wanting to watch him revisit this role, and I think that they're making the right choice to bring him back. And it's going to be cool to see what other kinds of cameos Disney can kind of sprinkle into here, because now, this time frame, I think it's kind of in that Solo time frame. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Lando Calrissian or, some of the stuff that's been interjected in. It's becoming a populated, expanded Disney universe again. The real trick here is The Mandalorian has to be awesome, and Episode 9 has to really hit in a powerful way. We need to all care about Star Wars again. Blake is shaking his head. He does not believe that that's going to be true or possible. But I have faith. I have hope. I have a new hope for Star Wars, and I think we're going to be okay. But these are good moves. I'm very much looking forward to Mandalorian, and I'm very much looking forward to this Obi-Wan show. And I am looking forward to Episode 9. Let's keep our fingers crossed that it is awesome. Now, we're getting a better idea of what to expect from the next James Bond movie, and yep, it's sounding like a James Bond movie. Eon Productions and MGM have revealed that the next film shall henceforth be known as No Time to Die, making it the sixth Bond movie to have the word kill or die in the title. They've also confirmed that the movie will begin with Daniel Craig's version of the character retired in Jamaica, only to be pulled back into service to aid his friend, CIA agent Felix Leiter. Daniel Craig was reluctant to return, so this may be his final turn as Bond, but we'll have to wait and see. No Time to Die infiltrates theaters in April of next year. Very much looking forward to this. What I wasn't looking forward to were all of these cheesy websites that would put Twitter links out there saying, the new James Bond title has been revealed, and then you had to click on the link to go to some page for them to type in No Time to Die. It was just so cheeseball. Why just put it in the tweet, man? Everybody's looking for clicks and links and stuff. It's 4 words. Just put it out there. I like the title. I think it's okay. I think it's a little... it's in keeping with some of the Ian Fleming titles of the past. It is a little... it's a bit weird to think that somebody's so busy that they don't have time to die. But clearly James Bond's got to save the world in this one. Rami Malek is the bad guy, and they're going to have a female 007 to kind of kick things off in this. These are the plot details that have been leaked out and teased so far. I don't like that I know this stuff, and I'm sorry for sharing this and spoiling it for anybody out there that didn't want to know any of this stuff. But I am hopeful that this movie turns out to be great. And it's also being directed by one of the filmmakers that worked on True Detective, so it's going to have a different kind of vibe and a different feel to it. Hopefully it coalesces, and if it's awesome and it makes hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, if not $1 billion, I wouldn't be surprised to see Daniel Craig back for another one. I know that they tried to get him back for 2. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Very much looking forward to this one. The other thing that's been happening, of course, is that Daniel Craig's been consistently getting hurt while making this movie. So that might be it for him. He was like, no, I'm done. Now over to another globe-trotting adventurer. Lara Croft is making a return to theaters. I'm excited about this. Last year's Tomb Raider movie is getting a sequel. Deadline reports that MGM has given the film a green light and even set a release date of March 19th, 2021, with shooting slated to begin next year. Alicia Vikander will be back as the iconic video game treasure hunter. While behind the camera, the film will have a new director, indie filmmaker Ben Wheatley. The last film failed at the box office domestically, so it was doubtful that a sequel would happen, but thankfully it was a huge hit overseas, especially in China, which is why the studio wants more. I think Alicia Vikander was a terrific choice as Lara Croft. I think she's fantastic, and there were some pretty cool sequences in the movie, but the games are so M-rated and, frankly, kind of frightening and legitimately filled with high stakes, and you see Lara Croft go through some just brutal deaths in the game. And then when you see the movie, it's almost like they made a theme park version of that. It's kind of family friendly and safe. And I don't know if the answer is to go to an R rating for the sequel, but something has to be done to kind of up the stakes and up the ante a little bit. I saw Free Fire, which is Ben Wheatley's one of Ben Wheatley's movies, and it was interesting. It was like a shootout. It was like a 2-hour-long shootout, and it was competently made. Interesting choice here, but the guy's got a resume. He's got a bunch of different flicks out there, and clearly isn't afraid of shooting movies with a little bit of action. Hopefully this has a ton of action, and Alicia Vikander can kick some serious ass as Lara Croft. I think she's wonderful. So let's hope that this is going to be a great movie. Now, it's official. You'll be able to play with your friends in Cyberpunk 2077 eventually. After years of playing coy, Cyberpunk 2077 developer CD Projekt Red has confirmed rumors that the game will have an online multiplayer component. The plan is to launch the single player in April as planned, with the multiplayer following at a later date. Although they haven't provided a firm release window, so there's no telling how long we'll have to wait. This makes Cyberpunk 2077 the first big game from the studio with multiplayer. And I think when you introduce a world like the one that we're going to venture into in Cyberpunk, it really makes you feel like you'd like to jump in there with some friends and explore it together. And I'm excited like crazy for this game. I suspect that maybe the multiplayer will be something that we only see on the next-gen consoles. I feel like it's going to take them some time if this is their first multiplayer experience. I don't think they can just tack it on. And I don't feel like this is a huge action role-playing experience like this. I don't feel like the best, use case for multiplayer here is get into a deathmatch. I feel like they need to come up with some really interesting ways for people to explore cooperatively and do some missions and stuff together. Maybe in the vein of some of the stuff that we've seen in Grand Theft Auto 5, some of those heists or something like that. Very, very excited about this, though. This game, I think, is going to blow us all away when it comes out next year.